Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Cyber Reviews. I'm your host Rory Jocelyn and this week's movie is going to be Nameless, Total Terminator, better known almost everywhere in the world outside of Germany as Timebomb. Timebomb is a psychological cyber thriller starring Michael Biehn, an action star from the 80s most famous for roles in James Cameron films such as playing Kyle Reese in the original Terminator, Corporal Hicks in Aliens, and Lieutenant Coffey in The Abyss. And The Abyss? The Abyss. The Abyss. Makes it sound a lot more like a church drama. Bane has a huge career outside of Cameron's direction, including portraying Chris Larrabee in the TV series adaptation of The Magnificent Seven, playing Johnny Ringo in the film Tombstone, and Sheriff Haig in the Planet Terror Grindhouse duet by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. As one of his lesser-known films, Timebomb is a strange mix of retreading old ground and giving the actor much more to do in terms of the emotional side of the character. For his part, Bane appears to be essentially reprising the role of Kyle Reese, but a sort of modern-day nice guy version of Kyle Reese suffering from more overt symptoms of PTSD. This puts him in a strange position of stretching his acting legs without seeming to do anything new at all. His co-star is Patsy Kensit, a British actress who was only 22 at the time of the film, so they dressed her up in old ladies' clothes for some reason, and didn't really work. She had previously appeared in Lethal Weapon 2 and would go on to a sort of varied career that I'm sad to say I mostly haven't seen. Her turn in Emmerdale when I was still a late teenager is probably the most renowned acting role I've seen her in, but wiser film buffs than me assure me that she has been in much more important works than that. Anyone too young to remember her stint in Emmerdale between 2004 and 2006 may know her from her 169 episode stint in Holby City. Depends how old you are, I suppose. I'm hoping to get to know more of these crucial back catalogue gems as I plough through a myriad of movies. Grow with me now! So apologies to Patsy Kensit for essentially only knowing you for Emmerdale Farm. Timebomb is an American production, that's for sure. However, there is something of a grittier flavour to it, which I think comes down to the writing and directing choices of Avi Nesher. Avi Nesher is an Israeli filmmaker who has been considered one of Israel's finest. He has produced more films than he's written or directed, however his Israeli connections were clearly used to assist Bane in getting into emotional and physical shape for the role. This includes a scaled down version of the Israeli Defense Forces variant of Navy SEALs training, learning to draw, cock and shoot a gun in under 3 seconds. Cock the gun, not cock. And he did this for 10 hours a day for a week. An Israeli psychiatrist also trained him to express the various different kinds of anxiety, from mild discomfort to fully fledged anxiety attack, which is evident by Bane's detailed and expressive performance throughout the film. Showing further ignorance on my part, I actually haven't seen any other films in Avi Nesher's back catalogue either. However, reading through some of them, I was quite intrigued to watch a few, including Doppelganger starring Drew Barrymore. It caught my interest because of that sort of psychological thriller aspect. While they may not be Cyberpunk films, they'll certainly be on one of my watch lists. They probably won't appear on this particular channel again, but he did one, so good on you, Avi! Timebomb focuses on a simple, kind man called Eddie Kay, who's a simple watchmaker who ends up getting on the national news because he saves a woman and child from a burning building. This catches the eye of a local government agent called Colonel Taylor, played by Richard Jordan. Taylor believes Eddie to be an ex-agent of theirs who they believed had died in a prior attack. After an attempt on Eddie's life by one of Taylor's assassins, the police discover that the real Eddie Kay died in Vietnam approximately 20 years prior. Eddie's life turns into an anxiety-fueled bloodbath as him and his therapist, Dr. Anna Nolmer, piece together his PTSD flashbacks to try and work out exactly why this simple watchmaker is under threat. It turns out that Eddie was part of an experimental CIA program to try and create 7 super assassins, with Eddie himself being the 7th and most successful one. However, he got a conscience on the job and was caught in an explosion attempting to save the life of a politician who he was tasked to kill. The reason being that this politician was dead set against ending illegal and corrupt CIA activity. This is where some of the casting kind of mismatches with the story. It's stated that all 7 assassins, or at least most of them, were reported as having died in Vietnam, and we know that Eddie Kay is the 7th and last of them. However, Tracy Scoggins' assassin is clearly too young, and this might be my ignorance, but I don't believe women were conscripted to fight in Vietnam. This is never mentioned in the movie itself. However, as she's the only female assassin, she sticks out because of costume decisions as well. All 5 other assassins are dressed either in normal day wear or combat gear depending on their situation, whereas Miss Blue, as she's called, is always dressed in a tactical miniskirt and large hoop earrings. But for those who have noticed that all the heroes in this film are distinctly white, it's good to know that at least the group of villains is diverse.
Okay, cool, no doubt.
The film traverses a myriad of different locations, such as a shootout in a hospital,
Please don't hit our stuff.
what appears to be a police hairdressing salon, short back and sides, sir, and a massive jelly baby factory. We also get to see the most realistic Thunderbird puppets on the run. This particular Blu-ray was released exclusively in Germany by Koch Media. Yes, I've seen people are starting to already comment on my fetishization of German releases. It's a nice media book, has like all of these photos in it, which is quite snaz, and lots of German that doesn't make any sense to me because I still can't read German. I'll be back. The Turtle Terminator. There is a Shout Factory release in the US as well, under the title of Timebomb, obviously, because that's its actual name. I'll do some screen comparisons in a little bit. However, looking into the history of the name, it seems that the reason it's called Nameless Terminator makes no sense either. It was called Timebomb almost everywhere it was released in the world, except in Germany, where it was called Total Terminator. However, the name Nameless was the working title of the film in the USA before it got called Timebomb. So when they re-released it, they should really have called it Timebomb Total Terminator if they wanted to include both titles. I don't know why they went with the working... I don't know what they're doing. So in Germany, this only comes in the media book format. There are a couple of alternative cover artworks, but this was my favourite one. Schnage. Got that 80s glam. I found Timebomb's image on this Blu-ray to be pleasing enough, but it is clear that the film would benefit from a fresh transfer to improve the source colours and boost the sharpness of the image. Even close-ups can lack strong facial details. Although it's not bad, it's just not going to blow your socks off. The sound is in stereo format but works perfectly well. The action would likely benefit from a surround remaster because it can fall a little flat with things such as the explosions and things like that, just to give it a little bit of extra impact. However, I will say in its defence that the dialogue is incredibly easy to hear, which is not always a given for catalogue American titles. So in my opinion of the film, the first half of this movie is absolutely excellent. It builds towards a real in-depth look at trauma, and the psychological thriller and mystery elements build in a really believable manner. Sure, there's the odd dress sense of Ms. Blue, but these are negligible details when the story is moving along so well. Michael Baine's performance in this half is completely believable as a man just surviving, his curling up after an assassination attempt, his pained expressions when trying to subtly ask for help from Kensit, brilliantly subtle, really well done, super realistic portrayals of a man suffering from trauma. In fact, I'd probably go as far to say as the film is working its way towards being an actual genuine classic until just after the hospital shootout. Then it all kind of turns around a little bit. See, after this point, some of the characterizations we've been building tend to fly out of the window. Patsy Kensit's character suffers the most, going from an analytical and empathetic character to a stereotypical flailing damsel. While it's believable that she'd be scared and fearing for her life, her shouting at Eddie makes it seem like she's forgotten the assassins she literally just witnessed, and she essentially gives up any form of trauma counselling for Eddie to act as a sort of typical feminine waif. I hasten to add that these issues are a fault of the script and not of Kensit herself. Indeed, this sequence in the car actually serves as the first big reminder of Bane's Terminator role, with Kensit standing in as sort of a backup Sarah Connor. However, the trajectory of her character is kind of in polar opposite to Sarah Connor. See, Connor started off as sort of a scared, helpless woman and develops from sort of this point in the movie, in the Terminator, into a self-sufficient badass. Dr. Anna Nolmar starts off analytical, empathetic, supportive, strong in her own way, and descends from this point into a whimpering, helpless and scared mess. Her psychoanalytical skills also decline based on some of the statements she makes. Beyond not just being able to use her supposedly extensive knowledge of psychological disorders to work with or manipulate Eddie for her own survival, she actually says some really dumb things. Things like,
Didn't even cry at my father's funeral. He trained me to hold back my emotions.
"Then your father was a shit therapist." This is further shown in a line I can't imagine a psychotherapist actually saying to a patient.
The nightmare's over, Eddie. It's finished.
That is not how PTSD works. As a psychotherapist, you should know that. The chemistry between Bane and Kensit wasn't particularly realistic to me either, nor was the sexual moment between the two characters that, at least to me, seemed to come out of nowhere at completely the most inappropriate time.
My nipples don't work. In what way don't work? Now, what I'm saying is no matter how hard I twiddle it, I can't seem to pick up Jazz FM.
Yes. The motives of the CIA can be a bit unclear as well. By the end of the film, we know why the CIA want to assassinate their political opponent and why Eddie would be considered a problem. But Richard Jordan's character initiates violent acts straight away against still unwitting Eddie, then after 3 assassination attempts tries to call the murder off because, well, he might not remember anything anyway. It's a bit late for that, mate. He's forced to continue the assassination attempts by his boss, a man we end up never seeing. So this scene would have been better showing Jordan's character sticking hard to the murderous principle and giving us a bit more of an explanation as to why and how they see Eddie as a threat to their ongoing plans. So for all my lambasting of certain aspects of this film, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The cheese hits hard in the second half, ruining any chance this had of becoming a thought-provoking classic, but the action is so well done as to remain enjoyable throughout. As someone with ongoing PTSD, I can empathise with Bane's portrayal in the film, but lament the lack of further depth of the topic later in the film. It's one I would definitely watch again and enjoy. It's just a shame that Avi Nesher couldn't have dedicated more script time to the psychological aspects of the premise to build to a more unique and interesting conclusion. Timebomb was released in 1991 and seems to be set then. It doesn't suggest any sort of future time. From what we see, this film seems to have been inspired more by the revelation of things like the USA's MK Ultra experiments, which were done by the USA, where illegal and invasive experiments were committed upon American and Canadian citizens by the US government, specifically the CIA. Real evil stuff. If you want nightmares, look into it. As such, it is a slightly unique cyberpunk as it focuses on similar futuristic themes, but set very strongly in historical events. This means that there's not a lot of future tech on display, but here's a few things that we see. Police room. Not really future tech, but definitely a ridiculous and superfluous design. Walls do the same job and for at least half the price. Unless this is a real police station, which I doubt, then I can't imagine hot boxes like this becoming a real thing in police stations. The Lang Institute facility. I like this set. Clearly a lot of effort went into it. Sadly, we don't get to spend an awful lot of time here, although the scenes are crucial to the story. Lots of CRT monitors, big industrial-style technology, jelly baby moulds. To my knowledge, we don't have systems quite like this. However, they do resemble a sort of twisted cybernetic edge, kind of like the sensory deprivation tanks. Sensory deprivation tanks are now used, albeit in a much more pleasant aesthetic, to increase muscle relaxation, improve sleep and decrease stress and anxiety. However, in the 1960s, tanks like these were used to test subjects under the effects of LSD and ketamine. According to several sources, you can actually get hallucinogenic effects inside of a sensory deprivation tank without drugs. So I don't even want to know how mental you could get taking ketamine and then diving in. Night vision glasses. I really like the design of these. Sleek, minor circuit board print designs on the frames and a cool visual overlay. I would have liked to have seen these introduced earlier in the film and utilised somehow in a unique action sequence. As it stands, they're more of a blink and you'll miss it affair, but the props department definitely deserves props. God, I need some water after this. I'm dry as a nun's cooch. I enjoyed this movie a lot, and I have zero regret for my purchase. I can tell that this will be a very chalk and cheese movie. So perhaps it's best to rent it or see it online before choosing to make a purchase. Those after a deep, intellectual, cinematic classic will be left a bit disappointed, not just because it doesn't meet those heights, but because it starts off in the premise actually gives it the opportunity to reach those heights. Those after a budget Terminator-esque action flick without any sort of deep thought, you can just turn your brain off and watch Michael Biehn roundhouse people in the face. Yeah, full of impressive stunt work. You've got lots you'll enjoy in this film. Stay for Michael Baine's performance and the well-choreographed action. Leave if you're after a deeper or more insightful storyline. Thank you very much for joining me today, guys. It's been great being able to look into... I'd never seen this before, so I had no idea what the film was about before I watched it, and I wasn't disappointed. I've really enjoyed looking at these sort of more niche films. So yeah, and thank you for all your support. Feel free to leave comments as to your thoughts on the film, as to what you think about my reviewing of the film, if you agree or disagree, if you think it's actually more intelligent than it is, or if you think that I've seen more in the first half than was genuinely there, then feel free to say that as well. Or list any recommendations for other films starring Patsy Kensit or made by Avi Nesher. If you want to get in contact outside of YouTube, obviously you've got the YouTube comments, but you've also got the ability to contact us on our Facebook, which is facebook.com/cyberpunkfilm. You can also contact us on Twitter @cyberpunkfilm. And if you wanted to email us, then you can contact us at contact@cyberpunkstudios.co.uk. There's plenty of other of these reviews that are going to be coming, so hopefully you'll stick around and you'll get some more enjoyment out of those. And I will catch you guys next week. Yeah! That's like being on drugs. Oh my god, they're kaleidoscopes.